Many of the men of the American Revolution are household names: Washington, Hancock, Adams. But there's one name that not everyone knows. Deborah Sampson was born December 17th, 1760, in Plimpton, Massachusetts, a decade before America's independence.
She struggled as a child. Actually, her father had left the family. They thought that he was gone out to sea and maybe drowned, but they found that he was living in Maine. Mother was trying to raise the children. She was really unable to support them, so she sent Deborah out.
Life was tough for Sampson from the very beginning.
She was really very, very interested in being educated. She learned to read by reading the books that these boys in the Deacon Thomas family had, that they had brought home from school. She taught herself how to sew and how to read, and just wanted to better herself.
As I was walking through the common land of Boston on a beautiful spring day, I told a young child of my story, the story of Deborah Sampson and of Robert Shurtleff. The young child told me, "You are like America's Mulan." So there you have it. If I remind you of Huya Mulan, or perhaps Shakespeare's Portia in The Merchant of Venice, or any other brave female who dared to cross gender lines, I am the American heroine.
And the creative director at the Freedom Trail Foundation said, "Have you heard of Deborah Sampson?" And I said, "No." "Oh, well, she's the official heroine of Massachusetts." I said, "Well, I should have known about her then, shouldn't I?" I started researching her, and immediately I fell in love. It was fascination at first sight.
On April 19th, 1775, the first shots of what came to be known as the American Revolution were fired at Lexington Common. Out of desperation and love of country, Deborah decided to join the army.
Eventually, Deborah realizes that the opportunities that are being presented to the men that are around her are too good to pass up. And she creates a suit of man's clothing, and she enlists. And just upon enlisting, the bounty money that she receives is something like 60 pounds sterling, which is an absolute fortune in the 18th century. More money than she'd made working as a seamstress and a schoolmarm, combined.
She was very tall, very mannish looking, very muscular. When she was in the service, they all seemed to wear their uniforms all the time.
She had the fortune of not being a very curvaceous woman, so she did fit a soldier's uniform.
In 1782, Sampson disguised herself as a man and enlisted in the 4th Massachusetts Regiment under the alias Robert Shurtleff. Later that year, Sampson was wounded in battle in Tarrytown, New York. Instead of seeking medical treatment, Sampson removed the musket ball from her own leg. However, in 1783, after contracting brain fever, Sampson had to see a doctor.
Once they found out, really wasn't until near the end of the war, when she had been injured earlier and removed a bullet herself. It was in her leg. But the second time she went to a doctor, and it was Dr. Binney, who discovered that she was a female.
In 1783, Deborah Sampson was discharged from the Army after serving a year and a half. After the war, Sampson moved back to Massachusetts and married Benjamin Gannett, but her financial struggles continued.
When years go by and Benjamin and her just can't cut it, Benjamin is, Revere describes him as being of small force in business, so he's not a capable businessman. They have a farm that is not very fertile at that time period, so they're really struggling. With
nowhere else to go, Sampson turned to a historic friend for help.
She gets a new neighbor, a fellow by the name of Paul Revere, purchases a home in Canton, and she was living in nearby Sharon. And as they come to meet one another, he realizes that a lot of the gossip and the rumors about her were untrue. Now, she had asked to borrow a few dollars from him here and there, and he takes it upon himself to write this letter requesting a military pension on her behalf.
To make ends meet, Deborah gave lectures on her unique military experience and gender roles. On April 29, 1827, Sampson died of yellow fever at the age of 68. Nearly 200 years after her death, she still remains an inspiration.
I think she was a great influence.
I think every woman, regardless of what their military involvement or status is inspired by Deborah's story when they hear it.
A new museum was opened in Washington, D.C. in tribute to all the women who have fought in the various wars in our country, and Deborah, of course, is among them.
Like every time I have like an ache or a pain, I'm like, stop complaining, because Deborah Sampson dug a musket ball out of her thigh. So you really don't have anything to worry about.
She was a woman of great strength, courage, and patriotism. More people should know the name Deborah Sampson and her curious case.